and sometimes it worked out well, and I have a story for that in just a second. But I also want to point out that if you don't, being humbled is fantastic, but if you can avoid it, like, please listen to the pain in this conversation and avoid it. It's not worth it having your own story. Just
Right.
borrow mine. It's fine.
When you're driven, the need to accomplish a goal is relentless. Hard work and ambition compel you to do whatever's necessary. In my work as a personal injury trial lawyer for 18 years, it's common to meet driven people. Those with drive can have different personalities, careers, or backgrounds, but they possess one common factor. Despite their passions, driven people want to surround and motivate themselves with other driven people. If you want to learn how to overcome obstacles by learning from others, then tune in here. This is the Driven Crowd Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into episode 72 of the Driven Crowd Podcast, fueled by Snellings Law. I'm your host, Scott Snellings. Today, I'm joined by Chandler Lyles. Chandler has been helping small business owners grow their businesses for over a decade. He started in the United States Air Force as a liaison between small business owners and the government. Then he used modern-day digital marketing strategies to take a small upstart barbecue catering company from a tent on the side of the road to a multi-unit brand. Now, as the co-founder of High Beam Marketing, Chandler uses his experience to help small business owners stop wasting money on random acts of marketing and build a plan that actually helps them scale their businesses. Chandler, welcome to the Driven Crowd Podcast.
Hey, Scott, thanks for having me, man. I'd love to get a copy of you reading that intro so I could show my wife. Maybe the next time I'm in trouble, I could be like, hey, Scott thinks I'm pretty cool. Look at this. Look at this.
And she'll be like, you wrote that, man. That doesn't count.
No. Hey, that could be our secret. I don't think she knows that
Yeah.
that I have to write my own bios sometime.
Exactly. And you know what? She probably shouldn't listen to this segment of the podcast either. Just give her one starting, a couple of minutes in. I love the random acts of marketing. We see it all the time. I'm constantly bombarded with it based on what we do. And so I want to put that on the shelf because I definitely want to come back and talk about that. So tell us, where'd you grow up? How did you end up in the United States Air Force?
Well, I was recruited by my dad, ironically enough. So my dad was a United States Air Force enlisted guy. He did 23 years or so.
Oh, wow.
And 15 or 16 of those years, he was actually a recruiter for the Air Force. So my experience was growing up as an Air Force brat, but it was a little bit different than most people. We weren't really connected to a specific base. And so we lived in a lot of random cities from all over the southeastern part of the country for the most part. And, I tried to go to college. We ended up in Lexington, Kentucky, where the University of Kentucky is. And it's March Madness while we're recording this. Yeah, it's amazing. It's so underrated. People don't know about it. But the cool thing when I was there is I was like, all right, cool. I'll go to college. I'm kind of the first person in my family to try college. Like, my parents had dabbled in it, but I was like, I'll try to go, and without a plan. And I made it 3 semesters, and I dropped out for a number of different reasons. And my dad looked at me and said, well, what are you going to do now? And I said, well, I guess I don't know what to do. So I'll do what I know how to do, which was be in the military. And he was very gracious and helped me find the right job within the Air Force, knowing my skill set as his son. And it was the one time in my life where nepotism really worked in my favor, and I'm very grateful for it.
So tell me this: what did your dad look at in you to determine, which job would be best for you? You went through that process with him. Did he give you any insight on that?
Yeah, I think your parents know you better than anybody, especially if they're healthy, well-rounded people. And I often say that I won the parent lottery. Both of my parents were incredibly loving, and they're very family-oriented. And when you move so much, your social group resets every 3 to 4 years. And that probably makes it much easier for me to come do things like podcasts now or different networking events. But it's funny when you see each child that you have is sort of wired in a specific way. And I think that, he raised me since the time he was basically 21. So he had me very young with my mom. And I think he just knew me really, really well and said, hey, here's 5 jobs that I think would be a good fit for your skill set based on what I know about you. And I reviewed them all. And that's how I ended up being a contractor for the United States Air Force. And that ended up being a really fortunate job for me to get, given what I do now as a career, because I got to meet hundreds of other small business owners. And I never knew that entrepreneurship was a job that you could have. I thought you just had to work for somebody. I didn't know you could actually own your own thing.
Do you remember what the other jobs he put in front of you were?
I think finance was one of them. Public relations might've been another one. There were some special forces type jobs because I joined when I was 19, so I was still pretty young and athletic and interested in doing that kind of stuff.
Right.
And when I saw the different qualifications and some other of the large data numbers for like getting hurt and other injuries, I was like, I don't really feel that called to that type of thing. It just sounds more fun than actual like being called to this thing. So
Yeah. All right. So you get into the Air Force, you have this kind of different sounding job, right? You don't really think about the United States Air Force. Oh, I'm going to go be a contractor. What exactly did that job entail?
Yeah, so if you ever seen the movie War Dogs with Jonah Hill and Miles Teller, that is exactly what I did. But I was the government side of that relationship. So essentially, we would have customers on base come to us and say, "Hey, I need these items or I need this service, and can you guys go out and help us procure these things?" And so what we would do is we take these specifications and we post them online. It used to be called FBO. And now it's sam.gov or something like that. I haven't looked in a while, but the whole principle there was basically you have hundreds and hundreds of potential contracts that you can bid on. And we would get anywhere from, 5 to 25 different companies bidding on each one of these contracts. And my job was to basically sort through all of that information, establish relationships with those different vendors, and then begin to negotiate on behalf of the government. And I joined the Air Force at 19 and left at 23. And so it was a real baptism by fire from an experience standpoint. I think I spent like $50 million before I had finally left. And it was just experience that I never could have gotten in college. And so I was very fortunate that that's where I ended up. And I think exposure is so important. You talk about like, how do you actually get where you're trying to go in life? And I think until you can actually go somewhere because somebody else has done it beforehand via that exposure, that's when I really got excited about entrepreneurship, because all of a sudden I started meeting all these guys that were very, very similar to me. And I was like, oh, I can do what they do. They're not any different than me. They do the old proverbial one pant leg on at a time sort of thing. And that's what got me into reading more books about entrepreneurship, and slowly, day by day, took that journey.
Great movie, by the way, War Dogs. Absolutely hilarious. So I think that's incredibly important what you just said there in terms of being around other people who have done the thing you're trying to do. Right. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the old gray hairs. I consider myself very quickly approaching being an old gray hair now. But people your age, like there's other people doing exactly what you're trying to do. Go get around them. Go introduce yourself. Go offer to do some work for them for free just to learn. It's so important to go and try to get that experience, try to get those reps, whatever it is that you're wanting to do, because all you're doing is learning at an extraordinarily fast clip, as well as, hey, showing yourself that I can fail and keep going and learn that much faster.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it took me a long time to figure that out, that you could leverage other people's experience. So I started, obviously, behind me. If you're watching the YouTube version of this, there's tons of books, and I like to learn that way. But eventually I figured out like, oh, if I could build this community, I would say. One person just 1 or 2 steps above where I'm at right now. So they've already got the answers to the test of where I'm trying to go in the next 12 months, and they could potentially help me do that. Just sharing ideas, not official like mentorship relationships, but just friendships you make with people that are slightly ahead of you.
Right.
You can't be too far ahead, because then their experience and ideas aren't really relevant to your next 12 months of problems, let's say.
Yeah.
The next relationship I try to look for is that peer-to-peer relationship. So somebody that's on your same level, trying to do the same thing you're doing right now, and you guys can be testing different ideas all along to see which one's going to actually work out best. And then this one is a bonus one that is nice to have, but not a mandatory thing. It's one person that's maybe 1 or 2 steps below where you're at, right? Because through the process of sharing what you've already learned with somebody else, you kind of sharpen your own saw, so to speak, and you get even better at what you're doing right now. Because oftentimes when you engage with the information in different ways, and you're trying to explain those stories to people, you're reminded of things you may have forgotten, and it makes you a better operator, I think, in the long run, to try to give back. And it's just going to make the community a better place anyways.
Absolutely. And when you have to really distill it down to concepts that you can teach someone, you really know it, right? Maybe you did something based on a gut feeling, but when you go back and you explain why to someone, you can't just say, oh, well, that's what my gut told me to do. Not if you're trying to be helpful anyway. You go back and you evaluate it. Oh, my gut was right, but here's why. Here's what my subconscious was seeing, or here's what I saw but wasn't really cognizant of to make my gut feel this way. And I think that's hugely important. And to your point, being a mentor to someone else, or just providing help to someone else. And the more you give, it just comes back in spades, right? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And there's something else too. Like when you hear people like, okay, maybe you've read a book twice. When you read it the second time, it's a different book, right? The stream has changed given the passage of time. The sand moves, different water, all those things. You are, as a person with different experience and different level of wisdom, come into that and you experience that book way differently. Because I remember when one of the very first entrepreneurship books that I actually read, I liked a lot of the ideas in the book, but I had no real world experience to really compare it to. So I had no idea to even understand if I was reading something that was helpful or not helpful. And I think that's really where we see a lot of the internet guru industry develop, where it's not like somebody like you who's a well-established multi-decade legal professional that has tons of experience and tons of wisdom in this space. It's like anybody any time of day can watch a YouTube video, become an expert in something, and then just start marketing themselves that way. And we see this time and time again in the internet guru space. And now that I've been an entrepreneur for over a decade, I can go read a book and I can leverage my past experiences to actually see, is this helpful? Is this actually good advice? Like, can I see where they're getting to, whether I agree with it or not? And I think you just sort of have to be a little bit patient as you acquire new information on your own entrepreneurial journey, and then actually get to the point where you know what is good advice and what's bad advice. But you're a lawyer. You don't know anything about giving people advice that they don't actually listen to, I'm sure.
Oh, never. All of our clients and they all listen to every word we say, for sure. For sure. Other lawyers, of course, have that problem, not us.
That's right.
I think that's such an amazing point. Reading these books, you get so inspired. You're like, yes, I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do this. And then you go try to do those things in the real world and they completely blow up in your face because you don't understand the context in which you can deploy those tools, or you can deploy, those plans or processes or systems or whatever it is. And when I first started Snellings Law, one of the things I did is I created a book list based off of a bunch of really smart people's recommendations. And I dove head first, right? And I was reading book after book after book after book. And it was great in forming kind of the foundational knowledge of how to run a business. Hey, here's the profit and loss sheet. Here's the basic marketing principles. Here's how you create systems and operations. Here's this, that, and the other. But it wasn't until I joined a mastermind group and started being around people who were actually a couple of steps ahead of me. And look, most of the problems we deal with every day are solved problems. We just haven't been the ones to solve them yet. And so instead of just sitting there and thinking and struggling, man, go find somebody who's already solved it 2 years ago and ask them to help you out. And that has been such a hack for us being able to grow our firm in a way that is efficient, avoiding like the big massive mistakes, but also doing it with originality, right? Because the way they solve that problem worked for them. Maybe our situation is just a little bit different. So we have to use some creativity to polish off the edges and make it work for us. And so I think that is just massive, having the ability to go tap into other people's experience.
Yeah, I think if you can get information that gets you 80% of the way there, you should be a creative and intelligent enough human being to apply some problem-solving skills to get you the last 20% of the way there to actually get you to completion, right? And I think, we're not in a cult. There's no perfect answer to any test when it comes to building a business or even building a life for people that don't own their own businesses.
There are cults out there. There are definitely business organization cults out there, different organizations. But yes, you and I are not a part of that. No
doubt. But it's there's no healthy organization out there that's telling you there's one way to do it. Now that I run a digital marketing agency, it's funny. Every time somebody comes up to me and goes, how do I do this? Like, what's the guarantee to success? And I'm like, if you have any marketer or anybody that ever tells you like this is guaranteed to do it this exact way, they don't know what they're talking about.
Well, no, I had somebody email me today saying they were promising me the #1 Google spot and, personal injury law, Dallas personal injury attorney, for like $200 a month or something like that. So that sounds like a good deal, right?
Yeah, I should open up my own injury firm if that's the case, knowing what you guys can actually potentially win with different things.
Yeah, no, I think the one size fits all is ridiculous. But one of the things that I think a lot of entrepreneurs maybe don't understand when they become entrepreneurs is the amount of creativity that it really does take. I think we understand that, we're all problem solvers. You have to be a problem solver. If you're not a problem solver and you want to be an entrepreneur, you better have a sidekick who's a really good problem solver, because the majority of what you do is solve problems. That's how you progress. And having the ability to, think outside the box in a creative manner is going to be probably your number one skill, whether that be through figuring out, okay, who are we marketing to, product development, how can we make this organization more efficient, whatever the case may be. You got to use creativity to solve every single one of those problems.
Yeah. It's funny. My first business. So after I left the Air Force, I started a barbecue restaurant. I kind of started it on the side. So my last year in the Air Force, I was barbecuing on Fridays and selling ribs to people that had placed pre-orders in the office. And it was a very interesting time. But then once I left and I went and did the 10th thing that you mentioned in the intro that somebody wrote, may have been my wife, may have been you, may have been me, nobody knows. But but one of the things that I learned early on was what you're talking about. There's nothing but problems, and every single day, every single new event, every single new opportunity or crisis, they're all problems to be solved. Some are fun problems, some are scary problems. And when I was a young entrepreneur, I had the wrong mentality about this stuff, where I thought if I can just outwork my problems, I'll get to a place, whether it be revenue or wealth or people or something, where my problems will disappear and I can collect one of these, my dad used to call it mailbox money, the check would just show up and I didn't have to actually do anything for it. And, it's a dangerous mentality to have. It's kind of related to that old saying of you really just have to enjoy the journey, because there is no destination that's going to really bring you that satisfaction. It's that enjoyment of solving problems on a day in, day out basis. And it's ultimately what cost me my first business. You and I were talking about this a little bit earlier, right before we started the show, but essentially I built Lyles Barbecue Company from the ground up for 5.5 years. And then my ego got control of me, and I thought it'd be a great idea to open up something new, because in my mind, in the back of my mind, two things were happening. One, I thought that I should have been much further along after 5 years of grinding in this business owner space. Two, I thought, falsely so, that I could get to this magical mountaintop where all my problems would disappear. And in chasing a new business opportunity with the wrong reason behind it, ended up crashing the entire company, killed my cash flow, which set off a chain of dominoes that ended up closing the entire company down. And so 5.5 years, 6 years of work disappeared in 6 months.
Wow.
And there's nothing more humbling in life than to work so hard for something and then to have it disappear, not because something happened to you, not because like the market changed or the regulations changed or people stopped eating barbecue all of a sudden. It's only on me. I made the decision. I pushed us in this direction. I had the vision, and it was wrong. And the way we pursued it was wrong. And that was, I got to go work for somebody else and lose my entrepreneurship title and be a entry-level employee for a couple of years. And it was a very humbling time, but I learned gratitude for what I had previously, the freedom and the adventure and all the things. And now I just try to enjoy the day-to-day journey. It's actually a core value of mine now, where I'm always content, but I'm never complacent. And so I can make not another dime. The company could stay the same size. I'm super happy with what I have all the way around. But I'm not complacent. Like, I'm trying to do bigger things in the universe. I'm trying to make my community a better place. There's a lot of things I'm trying to get done, but it's okay if none of them ever happen.
That's a very healthy mindset, I think. I think most entrepreneurs hit that issue at some point, and many struggle with it for the entirety of their careers, of trying to grow faster, trying to compare yourself to other similar sized companies or similar aged people or whoever it is, whatever it is. It's always a comparison thing. And that can be the absolute death of a company, as you found out. And one of the things that I've noticed in the entrepreneurs who are incredibly successful is very similar to what you just said your core value was, but that is they have great patience. That doesn't mean they're just sitting on their thumbs and waiting for stuff to happen, but they have amazing patience. It'll come. They just believe it'll come. And with that, I think that allows you to really get into and enjoy that journey, because there is no, magic day where you make enough money and all of a sudden you can just step back and the mailbox money comes. Well, that's not true. There can be if you end up selling the company and whatnot. But as long as you're running that company, people aren't calling you with good news. People are calling you with problems, right? They're calling you with problems that need to be solved. And that's the job. You got to have vision. You got to have creativity. You got to have all these things. But at the end of the day, man, you're a problem solver. To your point, some problems are fun problems. Like, hey, how can we scale this thing faster? We got too much business. How can we hire more people? How can we do this, that, or the other? How can we deploy this really cool marketing campaign? Most of the problems aren't fun problems. It's, dealing with unhappy employee or mad client or provider that's, done you wrong. And I think that is one of the big differentiators is, can you find joy in the day-to-day solving problems, and can you find a way to be patient and sit in that?
Yeah. There's 2 books I would recommend your readers or your listeners pick up if this section of the conversation is interesting to them. Book number 1 is Extreme Ownership by former Navy SEAL Jocko Willink. And, I can save you the whole book, but really it's all about taking extreme ownership to a healthy degree, not unhealthy, but basically saying like all the problems inside of your business are your fault.
Yeah.
And the minute I accepted that, I became much more okay with like, it's okay that this problem exists because it's my fault. I can go do something, set up a new system, buy a new piece of equipment, hire somebody else, do some new marketing campaign. There's actions we can take to retake control of this problem that's been created. And so that's book 1. Book 2 is more of a long-term mentality book. It's by an author named Simon Sinek, and it's called The Infinite Game. And in that book, he really breaks down, there's 2 types of games that we play as people. There's finite games, which would be like an NFL game, right? There's 4 quarters, there's agreed upon rules. And at the end of the game, as long as it's not a regular season game, there's a winner and a loser, and the game ends. And then you wait a week and then the next game starts. People apply that same logic to the business world, and it's incorrect. And the war ideology around business, or the sports ideology around business, is really, it's the wrong sort of ideology, because these things are not finite games. Business goes on forever. I was reading something the other day about how Anderson Cooper is one of the I believe it's the Vanderbilt heirs, and he's the first Vanderbilt heir really to never receive any sort of money or any sort of pre-earned wealth from somebody else in his family. And so even a company or an entrepreneur as successful as Cornelius Vanderbilt was in the early, American economy, his thing still goes away. And so it's just infinite. The game is going to continue. And that really resonated with me, because if you Google barbecue restaurants in Lexington, Kentucky, Lyles Barbecue is not there, but there's probably still 5 or 6 options that are there chugging along as those entrepreneurs chase their barbecue dreams. The game is infinite. And if that's the case, you might as well just build a life you enjoy on a day-to-day basis. You're going to have problems, and no matter what industry you're in, and no matter what job level you have, whether you're the owner or just an entry-level employee, it just accept that they're your problems to solve, like you said, and just be okay with that, and enjoy the process of finding ways to solve those problems. Don't overreact to them.
Yeah. So I'm sure everyone who knows me and heard that first book recommendation is laughing, because I think that was the very first book I read on my journey through, I don't know, hundreds of books. And it's probably the one I've gifted / recommended the most, just because it had such a huge impact on me. And I think the biggest takeaway I have is, look, man, as soon as you own it, as soon as you quit making excuses or blaming other people, that gives you control. That gives you the ability to change it. Bad things are going to happen, of course. Yeah, some of it not in your control, but you know what you can control? How you react to it. And that
I've got a great story for
me.
this. My first hire ever with the barbecue restaurant, guy's name was Tom. And Tom was a philosophy major at the University of Kentucky. He was a good dude, right? He was a real nice guy. He even showed up on time, which in the restaurant business is pretty good for your employees.
Yeah.
But Tom, being a philosophy major, his mentality, the way he was as a person, was just wired differently than what it needed to be successful inside of a restaurant environment, right? Very logical, very slow, wants to overthink things, wants to think through things, wants to understand the meaning of why the mac and cheese scoop is this big and not smaller or larger or whatever. Like there was very philosophical Socrates type conversations around mac and cheese. And I found myself getting really frustrated with Tom early on, because I blamed him for a lot of these things. He's not fast enough. He's not wired this way. He's not taking my coaching. Him. And it changed me as a leader. It turned me into a micromanager, and I kind of became resentful, where I started like hammering on this guy all the time.
Yeah.
And then I finally, via some coaching with somebody who was a couple steps ahead of me, talking about what we talked about earlier, he had his own barbecue restaurant, and he gave me some advice on hiring people for cultural fits, and speed and efficiency are both cultural things that matter inside of a restaurant. So I took back to the control of that situation, like you're talking about there. And I let Tom know that, hey man, we're going to let you go today because this just isn't a good fit for you. Like, this is not what you're wired to do. And you're more than welcome to come back and eat anytime. And I think I gave him like a gift card or something, trying to make it easier. But like, it was my fault for hiring the wrong person, having the wrong systems in place, asking the wrong questions, not having a 30-day probationary period for new restaurant employees. Like, I changed a ton after that first situation. And it was freeing, to your point, when I acknowledged that it's my fault that Tom's here and he's struggling. And if Tom was being self-aware, he should have looked in the mirror and said, it's my fault that I'm in here and it's not going as well as it should be going. And so if we get a world where everybody starts thinking that way, I mean, man, that could be a real utopia, I believe.
Absolutely. If everybody takes 100% responsibility for themselves and each other, man, you're cooking. You're cooking there.
Well, that's right.
All right. So
one of those business cults we'll build together.
There's one of the foundational principles. All right. So the barbecue business goes down the gutter. You move into this entry level position. How did you get back into the entrepreneurial space?
So the company I worked for was a B2B small business coaching brand. It's Dave Ramsey, the big radio show guy down in Nashville. It was called Entre Leadership. And so for 2 years, I got to listen to a lot of our customers that owned small businesses. And they would call in with their problems, and our team would help them solve them. And so that was very inspirational. And then also this company that I was working for had hundreds of really smart people in the building. And a lot of them are really good marketers in different ways, or really good creatives. And so, you know, when you Google something, you're kind of like sifting through all the information, trying to discern what's right, what's wrong. Well, just imagine like you can walk across the hall and talk to a really smart videographer, or a really smart email marketer, or a really smart paid media person. And that's what I did for 2 straight years. I got as many 30-minute coffees as I could in the building just to learn what I didn't know about marketing. There was a lot of things I learned doing it on my own, but there's a lot that I didn't even know was available. And through that process, I met 2 guys, Ben and Austin. And they were both on the paid media team there, and they had a lot of opinions about running paid ads. And I had a lot of opinions about running a business and marketing strategy and all the things in general. And we just struck up a friendship. And then I had run a business before, and they both were very interested in doing that again. And so we decided to launch in September of 2021. We decided to start the business again. And it took me about 2 years to really recover emotionally, I think, and really get ready to go back into the game and feel confident enough again to go, okay, I'm not going to repeat the same mistakes again that I had just done. And I don't mind making mistakes. I just don't want to create the big ones or do the big ones again if I can avoid it.
And I bet that was super tough on you, going through, asking all those questions, learning all those things, because I'm sure immediately the answers to all those questions you were replaying in your mind with regard to the barbecue company.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I was, and sometimes it worked out well, and I have a story for that in just a second. But I also want to point out that if you don't, being humbled is fantastic. But if you can avoid it, like, please listen to the pain in this conversation and avoid it. It's not worth it having your own story. You know, just
Right.
borrow mine. It's fine. And I went from leading a team of 25. I was a former Air Force. I'm still an Air Force veteran, but I was an Air Force veteran. I owned a restaurant. It was a well-known restaurant. We were on television shows. Like, we were doing a lot of really cool things. And it was $1 million P&L. And like, I was responsible for a lot. And to go from that to an entry-level marketing job, because my resume was so weird that most companies didn't want to talk to me, because like, you did this weird stuff with the Air Force that I don't really understand. Maybe I watched the movie, whatever. I don't see how we help do that here with our company. And then also, like, you owned a barbecue restaurant. I don't really see how that's applicable to selling whatever widget we're selling at this company. And so I had to go all the way back down to the bottom and start over. But it created a real sense of pride, I would say, and also just humility to say that I'm never too good to go back and start over. So I know I can go back, and now I feel much better about if High Beam disappeared, I could start over again because I've done it before. But I would say one of the things I learned with the barbecue restaurant, you know, when you're starting a new business, and anybody out there that is a entrepreneur, maybe you have an idea and you haven't just quite, you know, called Snellings yet and got the LLC filed or whatever, right, and launched the thing. Get money in the door as fast as possible, like sell something, because the difference in $0 in revenue and $1 in revenue might as well be as big as the Grand Canyon for the first time.
Yeah.
And once you get that first dollar in the door, you're in the game, momentum has started, and you can do a lot, and you can pivot and change and grow and adjust and all the things. And so you got to get money in the door. So when I talked to my business partners early on, we didn't get a operating agreement. And I don't necessarily recommend doing this. This is a very unique situation. So listen to your legal counsel, definitely. But I mean, we didn't make a logo. We didn't make a name. We didn't make a website. We did none of the fun things you do when you're starting a company. There was no like theoretical deep dive conversations about what's wrong with the marketing industry. What can we do? Da, da, da. I was like, I don't care about any of that. We get one person to pay us for one marketing service, and we are in the game, and we can solve all those problems immediately after that. But we have to get revenue in the door. And that's what we did. We sold our first client, and they paid us via $500 Venmo. And we had to set up a business Venmo account. We didn't even have a business bank account to accept their money. It was crazy.
You didn't even have a business.
We didn't have anything. Yeah. But we got revenue in the door, and then I had a business. It was much easier that way.
Yeah. And I think, I love the term entrepreneur. Everybody has amazing ideas, right? The difference is executing on them. And I don't know that you can really call yourself an entrepreneur until you actually have some money made, right? Until you actually are producing a product or a service that people are willing to pay for. And cash is oxygen to a company. Mm-hmm. As soon as you screw that up, you're on the clock. As you found out. Tells us
34% of businesses close every year because of cash flow issues. I mean, it's a huge problem. And we talk about it all the time with our marketing clients, because they look at us and they go, hey, I've been burned by marketing agencies before. I've spent all this money and I don't know what I got for that. And I just have burned cash. And that's where, when you talk about random acts of marketing, that's really where that comes in. It's like, if you don't have a plan for the different areas of your business and what you're going to spend money on, like, you can waste money so quickly, because the other people in the world, and this is another thing I learned in the barbecue business, they are very good at making money, and they already know how to do it. And they if you don't know why you're buying the thing you're buying from them, you might as well have just burnt the cash in a driveway and filmed it for an ad, because that would have done better than whatever else you're doing.
Exactly. All right. So you have a company, they talk to Hy-Vee Marketing, and you ask them, all right, so what does your marketing plan look like? Do you have a marketing plan? What does it look like? They say, what is a marketing plan? What are the foundational things that any business owner needs to be thinking about as they approach their marketing?
Yeah, so I'm not that smart of a guy. You know, I struggled with getting a college degree. Obviously, I had to be enlisted in the military, failed out of the barbecue restaurant. So I try to simplify things down as much as possible. And I believe I have finally, after 15 years, gotten marketing down to a 3-word equation. So it's emotion multiplied by awareness equals influence. And if you break that down, each thing really makes a lot of sense. So influence is basically getting somebody to do something that you'd like for them to do. That could be scheduling a discovery call. That could be coming in to eat at your barbecue restaurant. That could be joining your email list. That could be buying something on your e-commerce website. Awareness is how many people know you exist and know what problem your business solves. Can they clearly articulate that? You know, McDonald's has a ton of awareness because they have thousands and thousands of locations and millions of dollars in ad spend every year. They're great at awareness. Emotion is the key differentiator between everything when it comes to marketing. Can you trigger one of the big emotions with your different marketing things? And the reason why emotion is so important, your brain is really good at ignoring everything. Emotion wakes you up and makes you pay attention. And so what we want to do is make really good ads or do great video podcasts like this, where you're teaching people things, making them happy, making them curious, making them pay attention so that they're more aware of you, so that you can influence them to go do something else. So that's where we start. It's like, you have to have the right mentality about what marketing is and what it isn't.
And so you kind of keyed in on there for the emotional aspect. What are the big emotions that you're looking to elicit to distinguish your voice from the crowd?
Yeah, so there's 6 core emotions really, and they can be explained in a bunch of different ways, but they are fear, anger, surprise, happiness, disgust, and sadness. And what's interesting about that is that only 2 of those 6 are positively associated. And that just speaks to human beings in general. We've kind of evolved to be okay with negative things because we assume if we're negative about something, we'll survive because new things are scary. So if we're happy or too trusting of something, we'll get burned. So what I recommend for people to do is, like, when you're making ads, when you're writing emails, when you're doing anything, look at it and ask the question, like, which of the 6 emotions does this trigger? Because if it's flat, your ad is just going to get ignored. Human beings have it's funny, as a marketer, you basically become a pseudo psychologist. So I know just enough to be dangerous in this
Right.
space, but it's all about connecting with the human mind, right? That's really what marketing is. And your brain is wired to make 35,000 decisions a day. And you are conscious of basically 70 of them, which I think is like 0.2%. And so if an example of that, people don't believe it, but it's like, have you ever driven somewhere and then you just all of a sudden wake up and you're like, I don't know what happened the last 5 minutes. I don't know how I got to this part of the road. That is your brain running on autopilot in a scary situation. A less scary situation is that you probably always put your socks on, the same foot to the same foot at the same time. You always brush your teeth with the same hand. Like, that is your brain just with established decisions and pathways, saving energy and just making you do the things that work over and over and over again. So what that means for you as a business owner or a marketer is that your customer already has a pre-existing habit that you have to interrupt. And the best way for you to interrupt it and make them think about it is to trigger one of these emotions, because all of a sudden with this emotion, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking about it, and then I start to remember it, right? And that's when you start to hear people talk about telling stories and all the different like marketing buzzwords that we hear. But at the end of the day, the simple explanation for all of this is, are you causing someone to have an emotion you want them to have?
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, Huberman, I was just listening to an Andrew Huberman podcast this morning on kind of changing the neuroplasticity in your brain, and in very similar type concepts too when it comes to attention and the different hormones that are released. So that really struck my mind whenever I heard you talking about that. All right, so we're down to our very last question. And this should be, well, I don't know, this may be a very difficult one for you because judging on the number of books that you have back there, what are your top 3 books that you would recommend? And you can't use Infinite Game and Extreme Ownership.
Man, that's a great question. So I'm going to answer. So whenever I ask me for a book recommendation, I tend to ask them, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Because then it makes it a little easier. But
Absolutely.
I'm going to do this on people that are personal development, trying to grow their own businesses, their own careers. And what I would recommend you get is Jim Collins' Good to Great. I reread that book every single year, and it's basically why certain companies make it and others don't. Another book I would recommend reading every year is what is it called? I'm blanking on the name of it. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. That's right.
Yeah.
And that book is a FBI negotiator, and it's one of the best books on communication that I've ever read. And I think that if you can understand the lessons in that book, it will make sales conversations easier. It'll make leading team members easier. It's probably one of the best self-help books for me, just from a communication standpoint. I tend to be really direct, really aggressive in my communication style. And so creating space for people to actually be able to say the things they're trying to say, it's been super helpful.
I'll throw in on that one right there too.
Yeah.
Really good audiobook to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a huge audiobook guy, but that one I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I agree. And talking about audiobooks, this next one is pretty much, I only read it in audiobook or listen to it, I guess, in audiobook fashion, but it's Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. And why I love that book is that it takes one of the great companies and one of the great entrepreneurs in the last 50 years who really revolutionized a lot of what we do now. And you can see that company grow from an idea in the very beginning all the way to Steve leaving for the first time because he had his own issues he had to work out, and he failed at Apple the first time, really. And then he goes on this sort of journey with Pixar and Next and learns the lessons, and then he returns to Apple the second time and completely revolutionizes the electronics market again. And to do that twice is incredible. And if you need a bonus book, there's a book that comes after that by a different author called After Steve, How Apple Became $1 Trillion Company and Lost Its Soul. And essentially it picks up right after Steve Jobs passes away, and Apple has an internal struggle between what kind of company are we going to be now that Steve's gone? Are we going to be the Tim Cook-led operationally efficient machine, or are we going to be the Johnny Ive artistic-led vision, we try things even though it might not make financial sense machine? And Apple, as we know, ended up going the Tim Cook route, and they did get to $1 trillion valuation, but now everybody hates them just like they hate every other large company out there.
All right. Well, Chandler, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate you being on the show. And thank you to everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Driven Crowd Podcast. We'll see you next time.